Alright, fair warning, this is going to be a very mathy and kind of boring explanation of this formula that you see here, and how all of Zero's different skills are calculated to his final melee damage formula. Please watch it, it'll make you understand Zero a lot better, but it will be kind of boring, so stay with me. Alright, the first thing we're going to go over is base melee damage. Base melee damage for a level 61 character is 34,580. Roid damage is the damage added from your shield. For the Hide of Terramorphous, it's 211,000. The Love Thumper, Punchy, and Order are all right about 150,000. Now I'll show you, you can see there on the card where you get the Roid damage from. I'll show you the base melee damage and then with Roid. We should get 34.5k as our base and 246k as our boosted. There's our 34k base. Now for boosted, we do get the 246k. Alright, to go over the multiplicative bonuses real quick, we have Ambush, Backstab, Killing Blow, Execute, and the Weapon bonus from the melee accessory. Ambush is going to give you 4% per level, or 20% at 5 points. Backstab is going to give you 8% per level when attacking from behind, or 40% at 5 points. Killing Blow will give you 100% extra melee damage per level, but the enemies have to be below 30%, so that one's very conditional. Execute gives you double damage on any attack and deception, and the weapon bonus is 200% for the rapier, 100% for the law, and 50% for any other weapon with a melee accessory. Now these bonuses are calculated by basically multiplying them rather together, just as it would seem they would be. So if you have 5 points in backstab, we should get a 1.4 times multiplier for us. That should take our backstab damage up to about 48,000, or with a Hide of Terramorphous we should get 344,000, or thereabouts. Now I'm going to show you what that looks like in game. We're going to start with the base melee damage and then how it goes up to 48, and then with the hide how it goes up to 344. So here we have the 34, now we have the 48. Now with the hide, we're going to get 344,000. Yep, 344. Alright, these are multiplicative bonuses, so adding the rapier should make it about 3 times as strong. You'll be able to see how adding the rapier puts our damage up above 1,000,000, just like the math says it should. Alright, so to actually calculate these, if something says 40%, you're going to convert it into integer form. That can be done by dividing by 100 and then adding 1. So 40% would go to 0.4 plus 1, 1.4. That's going to give you your multiplier, or how you're going to figure it out in the formula. You can see down there at the bottom, I multiply out all the different multipliers to get potential multipliers of 60, 148, and 155. Which is crazy, especially once you multiply that by the 246,000 or whatever your Roid damage is. Alright, on to the next section of the formula, which is the Additive Bonuses section. This includes Deception, Iron Hand, Counter-Strike, Rising Shot, Be Like Water, Follow Through, Like the Wind, your Calm, and your Badass rank. Deception can go up to 650% depending on how long you're in Deception for. You need to be in Deception for about 4.7 seconds to get the full 650% bonus. Iron Hand gives you 3% per level melee damage. Counter-Strike can add 50% per level, however it activates randomly after being hit, so that's kind of not reliable in some situations, but it is quite a large bonus as well. Rising Shot's going to add up to 9% melee damage per stack when it has 5 points, and you can get up to 5 stacks, so that's up to 45% more melee damage. It's useful when you're out of Deception for Ruby spamming. Be Like Water adds 6% melee damage per level after shooting an enemy. Follow Through is a kill skill that adds 8% movement speed and melee damage after after a kill for about 8 seconds. Like the Wind adds 3% melee damage per level while moving. A Calm includes any melee damage added by your class mod. and bar is from your badass rank. Alright, now we're going to go over the differences in the red and green bonuses. Those are the multiplicative bonuses and the additive bonuses. The red bonuses are much more potent. Like I explained here, how Deception is going to give you a 7.5 multiplier. If you add Counter-Strike to that, that's going to get it up to 10. This is only a 33% increase, because you would take 7.5, or you take 10 divided by 7.5 and get a 33% damage increase. 5 points in Backstab, though, is always going to be 40% more damage. So even though Backstab only says it's going to add 40%, it adds more than even Counter-Strike, which says it's going to add 250%. All the other skills like Iron Hand, Rising Shot, Be Like Water, Follow Through, they all only add up to about 10% damage. The red boost are the ones you're really looking for, the multiplicative ones. Alright, we're going to go over relics real quick. Melee damage relics for 0 are virtually useless. I do the math to show you here that a melee damage relic is only worth less than 2% increase in total damage, and it only gets worse from there. So you're going to want a cooldown relic instead of a melee damage relic. Alright, we're going to go over Slag, Critical Hit, and Death Mark bonuses now. These are also multiplicative. Slag is a flat 200% increase in single player on Ultimate Vault Hunter, or a × 3 multiplier. It's a little bit less effective in multiplayer, but not much. Critical hits for melee are always going to be a flat × 2 multiplier. They just simply double damage. You can see that there, from 34.5 to 69. Alright, now Death Mark. Death Mark is a debuff caused by meleeing an enemy. It causes 20% more damage, or that enemy to take 20% more damage from all sources. Kunai from Death Blossom can actually stack this effect. Each 0 can stack this effect up to 4 times for a possible 80% damage increase, which would be a 1.8 times multiplier. This is multiplicative with the rest of the red bonuses, Slag, and criticals. So, just with Slag and Kunai, we could get a 5.4% or a 5.4 multiplier. So that should give us 186k or 261k on a backstab. Alright, now you'll see, just like our math says, we will get these numbers. 186k and 261 on a back. Alright, so just how high can Zero's melee damage get? Well, looking at the formula, depending on how many things you have active and how perfect the situation is, you could easily hit for well over 4 billion damage. However, the visual damage cap is set at 1 billion, so that's how you see, myself and other people hit for 1 billion a lot of times on certain bosses or even small enemies if the situation is perfect. So, I hope now you understand how the numbers get so high with Zero's melee damage. You can see the calculations there. You can run your own calculations for your possible situations and whatnot. Even without Killing Blow, Zero can hit for 400 million sometimes, which is, more than enough to destroy most of the non-serious bosses in the game. Like, you can one-hit most of the mini-bosses, if you will. Knowing what we now know about Zero's melee skills and how they interact with his melee formula, making certain skills more potent than others, we're going to go over how to build an efficient melee skill tree with Zero. The first thing you're going to need to do, obviously, is take Deception. Then we're going to take Killing Blow because it's a multiplicative boost, albeit situational. We're going to take Iron Hand. Some people don't like Iron Hand because of its maximum health increased. However, Zero does enough damage to still be able to adequately health gate with the Ruby and the health boost from Iron Hand. I don't find it to be a big deal anyway. Obviously, we're going to take Backstab because that's your most consistent multiplicative boost that is easy to get. Execute's going to be a flat × 2 multiplier for any attack and deception. That's really good. I go ahead and take 5 points and follow through because I like the movement speed. The gun damage and melee boost are nice. The melee boost, however, is additive. Some people really like Resurgence. It allows them to, use the rapier more often than the ruby. However, I find that the ruby covers most of my healing. You know, I don't really need resurgence, and resurgence isn't great against bosses. However, you're going to need to get 25 points in the bloodshed skill tree to get Many Must Fall anyway. So if you want to take resurgence over Be Like Water, you're welcome to do that, because Be Like Water isn't that great of a boost. Or if you want to take it over Iron Hand, do that as well. Obviously, you're going to want a lot of points in Fast Hand, so you can switch between the Rapier and Ruby, or the any other weapons you're going to want to use quickly. Counter-Strike, even though it is an additive bonus, is still a pretty large increase, and it's a great skill to pick up. Ambush is multiplicative bonus, adding 20% damage anytime we're in Deception. That's a great skill to pick up. Unforeseen is a skill I used to use, but don't anymore. It's a good skill for mobbing. It's not great against bosses, and sometimes you don't want your Deception decoy to attract a whole bunch of enemies. Deathmark is a skill that will add the 20% extra damage for several seconds there, and can stack via kunai, so obviously we're going to pick that up. I take Innervate for the survivability bonus, as well as the movement speed increase while in Deception. That'll help you cover the gap and get to your enemies quicker. I take Rising Shot to get down to Death Blossom. It's a great skill for spamming melee out of Deception with the Ruby. It'll actually add a decent amount of damage, so that's nice. Obviously, you're going to want Death Blossom. Death Blossom is very powerful. If they catch Roid damage, meaning if your shield's down when you throw them, they're going to do massive damage, enough to kill most enemies. Even some ultimate badasses will die just to boosted kunai. But, it's also going to apply that 80% damage increase via Deathmark, and that's a very awesome thing to have. So definitely pick up Death Blossom. That's going to increase your productivity and adaptability by quite a bit. Now, those 2 extra skill points, you can throw them anywhere. I usually throw them in Like the Wind. I guess I'll put them in Resurgence. It doesn't really matter. Those 2 extra points, put them wherever you want. Two Fang, Fearless, Unforeseen. It doesn't matter. Keep in mind that critical hit boost from Headshot or Killer or any other of these skills will not boost critical hit melee damage, so those skills are not needed for a melee build, which is why we go down these 2 skill trees instead. To go over the gear, the Rapier is going to be the strongest melee weapon in the game with the 200% melee damage increase. The Ruby provides 12% healing for any sort of damage that you might do, whether it be grenade, kunai, melee, whatever. So that's a great weapon for survivability with 0. The Law is the 2nd strongest melee damage weapon in the game. As a side note, you're going to want to get the Ruby with a melee attachment. That's the Evisceration Ruby, since it's a Malawan pistol. Anywho, the Law is a weapon that is also a quest reward like the Ruby and Rapier, and it has the 2nd highest melee damage bonus in the game, plus it restores health with the Order Shield, which is the 4th strongest Roid shield in the game. Weapons to round out your weapon loadout. I usually use an Interfacer and a Plasma Caster. They're good weapons for second wins, and I find them to be fun to use. They're some of my more favorite guns. I really like Tediore Plasma Casters just because I enjoy hucking them at enemies. As far as Roid shields go, there are 4 options: the Order, the Punchy, the Height of Terra, and the Love Thumper. The Height of Terramorphous has the highest possible Roid damage in the game at just over 211,500, and the Love Thumper has the easiest to manage recharge delay at over 3.5 minutes while still having 150,000 Roid damage. However, it will kill your teammates in co-op play via the Explosive Nova, so you're going to want to avoid that in co-op, and you're going to need to figure out a way to manage your Height of Terramorphous or otherwise. A great way to do that is with a Stormfront. You'll notice that the Stormfront strips my shield to 0, activating my Roid damage boost. You're going to want a longbow Stormfront, or otherwise, longbow Tesla grenade will also work with a 0 or as close to 0 fuse time as you can get. Added by the new Tiny Tina DLC is the Chain Lightning. It will also strip your shield from full. Oops. Oh, there's one of the textures. I was going to get to that. There are some textures in the game where the Chain Lightning will not strip your shield, but there are other ones where it does. Wow, it almost killed me. Anywho, I find the Stormfront to be the superior option. However, the Chain Lightning does regenerate grenades over time. The Stormfront's a little bit better for healing as well with the Ruby. If you're going to be using a Love Thumper and don't need a grenade to strip your shield, you're probably going to want to go with a Slag grenade. The Bonnie is the best Slag grenade in the game. Its initial explosion has almost a 100% chance to slag, it seems like. And it, as you can see, bounces around shooting slag everywhere. Also, the Magic Missile is the Slag grenade added by the Tiny Tina DLC. It has a little more sophisticated homing mechanism than the rest of the homing grenades in the game, and it spawns 4 Slag grenades, as well as regenerating grenades like the Chain Lightning does. It's a very good grenade. As we covered, the melee damage relics do not help melee 0 that much, so you're going to want to go with a cooldown relic. A Bone of the Ancients with fire damage is great for a flesh heavy area, and corrosive damage is great for a armor heavy area. Adjust your other guns accordingly to what kind of area you're going to be in. And the class mods that a melee 0 uses are, at least the 3 best ones are Legendary Hunter Comm. This is great for survivability and learning how to play 0, because you get that 10% health back every time you deploy a decoy in Deception or get a Mini Must Fall. You get 10% health back. It makes it a lot easier to survive when you're picking him up, or if you're in team play and things are a little chaotic. The Shadow Ninja Comm is going to be your best class mod for general melee damage. That 6 points in backstab is the easiest situational boost. All you have to do is get behind someone and you're going to get an extra 48% damage. That's why it's the best melee damage class mod. This 5 points in Killing Blow are not unwelcome, obviously, and the 52% melee damage on the comm helps quite a bit while out of Deception, actually. I also really like the Shadow Stalker comm for its boost to follow through. It's going to help you run a lot faster in Deception and after your kills, and that will allow you to chain Mini Must Fall a little bit easier in some areas that you don't necessarily need the boost from the Hunter or Ninja comm from. Alright, the next section of the video will be, I think it'll actually be a different video, will be tips on actual live gameplay and what to do in situations. This was all theory. I thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you understand 0 a lot better now and why you need to take certain skills and why certain boosts are as effective as they are. Yeah, thank you for watching. I very much appreciate it. Look for part 2. Alright, be sure to watch part 2 as well. That's going to be me actually in a zone trying to use this information and teach you about it and the tips and tricks of actually playing Melee 0 now that you understand the theory behind it. If you got this far, you're a trooper. I thank you for watching it, and I hope I was able to give you a clear understanding of how this formula that you're seeing works. Again, thank you very much for watching this far if you did.